All right. 3, 2, 1. Now, the law says it's illegal to not watch Tuesdays with. Sorry, the law says it's illegal to watch Tuesdays with
See, you
Moire.
already screwed it up.
Yeah, I already
you
fucked it
ruined
up.
the momentum.
Welcome to Tuesdays with Ian Needs to Find Another Job. Tuesdays of Moire, the film podcast where we talk about strange movies with pretentious opinions. And tonight we're doing the next fan-voted episode focused on free movies about strippers. I'm your host, Ian Taylor.
All right.
Joining me tonight is Matthew McConaughey, also known as Stephen Beeson, and my good friend and ultimate co-host, Devin Kane. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good. I just want to do a quick shout out to Christina Applegate. No, sorry, wrong name. I want to shout out Daryl Ailes for this episode.
Yes, thank you, buddy.
Oh,
and I hope you're ready for us.
So Applegate come from?
That's a very good question.
No, you guys haven't seen Eric Andre's show?
Not that episode.
Not that episode, no.
That's such a reference. Or it's also kind of a meta reference to Donnie Darko, where Donnie's sitting. Spoilers for Donnie Darko. He really likes Christina Applegate, and when he's under hypnotism from a psychiatrist, he's like, I really want to fuck Christina Applegate. So
wow.
Shout out to.
Well, we're starting off strong tonight.
Starting off strong, but no. Shout out to Carol for suggesting this episode. I hope you're ready to witness us bear all tonight. As we
yes.
Bear our pretentious ass hats for all.
Yeah, Christina Applegate actually, she revealed that she had multiple sclerosis recently. So.
Oh no.
Prayers and support to her.
Yeah.
If
Full
she's listening to this, I hope she doesn't. Well, anyway.
Yeah. Also, why are you not supporting us on Patreon?
Respectfully.
Sending thoughts and prayers to Christina Applegate because Facebook likes no longer work.
Yes, that's true. Facebook went down for like 7 hours yesterday. Funny enough, almost immediately after a whistleblower came forward and said that it was doing shady stuff.
Curious. Yes.
Curious.
Suspicious. And everybody
I
was
wonder if they've
complaining
heard of
about...
the Barbra Streisand effect.
Oh, there you go. Nice tie in the Christina Applegate. But, we're alive. Facebook is alive, even though everybody was questioning their life choices as soon as it went down. I didn't, because I just use it for messaging now. I don't really bother posting anything on there, so I was not missing out much, but I know a lot of people who were. So hearts out to those who didn't make it.
I got a 30-day Facebook ban, and it's like it was something I did, I guess, like 100 years ago, but they got me. And what was
you
funny
got
was
James
Facebook,
Gunn.
I got James Gunn, right? And so when I came back, I was still banned. So
nothing changed.
Still have 7 days.
I envy everyone that never noticed that there was a problem. I can't tell you how many times I checked it during the day.
Oh, man.
Please work.
Well, we are talking about a trilogy of films about strippers. So
nice.
Get your singles ready because our G-strings are on.
Yep, and we're going the full Monty tonight,
ready.
Getting Magic Mike on stage in front of some showgirls.
Oh yeah.
That's the wrong order of movies, I don't care.
So, I don't know. Shall we begin?
Yes, let us begin with Paul Verhoeven's quote-unquote masterpiece, Showgirls. Do you want to introduce this one, Stephen?
I will introduce this one. I thought you'd never ask.
Alright, spoiler alert for all 3 films, by the way.
Yes. Showgirls. Written and directed by Academy Award nominated Paul Verhoeven in 1995. Showgirls tells the story of a showgirl, a young Vegas woman, trying to find her place in the ever-changing bright lights big city. Her name is Nomi Malone, and if you thought that was bad, well, this movie it's very interesting. It's sleazy. It's interesting, but Paul Verhoeven is a pretty interesting director. His early Dutch work was met with some mixed reactions. Spetters was critically panned and, was not a hit with audiences. But Turkish Delight was nominated for Academy Award for Best Foreign Film. When Verhoeven wound up stateside from his native Dutch land, he made some films like RoboCop and Basic Instinct that, while they're divisive, I think they still remain pretty well-crafted and memorable films that you've either heard of or you're familiar with them on some level. He also made things like Total Recall and Starship Troopers, which are harder to defend, but they've received a bit of a renewed interest. Or
oh man, Total Recall is a classic. I love that movie.
That's the only film I like from him.
Same with RoboCop. RoboCop is just a
Showgirls, combining the best and worst of Verhoeven's career. This features Gina Gershon, Kyle MacLachlan of David Lynch works, like everything David Lynch has ever done, basically. Blue Velvet, Twin Peaks,
Dune.
He's in that. Yeah, Dune. So Kyle MacLachlan, Gina Gershon, and of course Elizabeth Berkley, who at the time, for the last 4 or 5 years prior to Showgirls, had been starring as America's sweetheart feminist icon Jessie Spano on Saved by the Bell. Wow. Really trying to shed that, Disney kid image.
And boy, does she.
Yeah. And boy, she accomplishes that, if nothing
and
else.
Not only does she shed the image, let's talk about this, because I watched this, and the reaction that I had was like if you took Martin Scorsese's Casino and then you ran it through Google Translate and you tried to take that and shoot it into space and have Martian try to remake it as a way of understanding the human condition. That's Showgirls. This film is an absolute disaster, and I loved every second of it.
I am 100% with you there. It is like watching a snake in a jar eat like a giant animal. It's messy, it's terrible, it doesn't make any sense, but you just can't help but watch and ineffably laugh the pain away.
This was something I noticed, okay? Paul Verhoeven, you can't deny that he's a talented director. I mean, he was nominated for like an Academy Award very early in his career.
I mean, that's not always
he
a sign
knows
of talent.
He knows what he's doing. But what I'm saying is, there's moments in this film that I don't know if he's in on the joke, and there's moments in this film where I feel like he's in on the joke, but I don't know.
It's so tonally inconsistent.
No, it's not tonally inconsistent. It adds to the mystery of it. And that's what I loved about this film.
Sure.
Is like, I'm trying to sit here and I'm trying to like work out in my head. Is he just trolling the audience? Does he know? Or is this like Tommy Wiseau and he's like unironically just like he thinks he's made a masterpiece?
Yeah.
And this was interesting because I looked up. Kyle MacLachlan said that they were told this was a serious melodrama while they were filming.
Yeah, he thinks it's art. He thinks it's like an important critique.
But Elizabeth Berkley said that they always knew this was over the top. It was meant to be silly. And so I think that sort of mystery definitely like elevated it somehow for me, because it's like there's moments where I feel it's very self-aware, and then there's moments where it's not self-aware at all.
Well, here's what I think. I think it was originally meant to be a melodrama. Like, that was like the original goal or pitch for the movie. But halfway through, they were like, this is terrible. So you know what we should do? We should let the audience in on the joke and just make it as silly and over the top as possible. Because there's no other excuse for the tone of this movie. No excuse at all. Like, it just bounces around constantly. There's a scene, like, I'm gonna rip off the Band-Aid. There's a, like, pretty violent rape scene in this movie, in the middle of the movie.
No,
but the problem was, like, 5 minutes later, Elizabeth Berkley is sneaking to the guy's room and doing kung fu. Like, it's ridiculous. It's like watching an episode of Charlie's Angels, but 5 minutes earlier we watched like a pretty serious rape scene, and now we're watching this woman do kung fu and just walk out the front door with the two guys not noticing or calling the cops.
She's also doing kung fu completely naked, which is another thing.
Yeah, she's doing like jump kicks. It's like the Wicker Man. You know, like, it doesn't fit like what the movie was trying to tackle 5 minutes ago. But that's the whole movie.
Yeah, and I mean, Devin, are you still with us?
Yeah.
Yes, last I checked. I'm waiting for a gap in the conversation to give you my hot
tune
take
in.
Here. I'm here. I'm waiting for someone to finish their thoughts. Someone was just talking now.
Well, I mean, I think that okay, I want to first off, I want to disagree with the assessment that the technical elements are bad. I say the technical elements are some of the best things about.
Oh, I think they're the best part too, but they do not.
Oh yeah, it's a confidently made movie. It just juggles so much with what its approaches, what its it's thematically inconsistent. There's ideas here. I think that he kept juggling back and forth with his mind. How serious do I want this to be? How satirical do I want this to be? I think that, just from what I've heard, that he's just been kind of juggling back and forth between these different ideas, and it was just hard to kind of piece together in his mind as he was filming how it's going to go.
There's some brilliant use of staging. The dances are well choreographed. There's some fantastic elaborate costumes and set design.
It feels like the real Vegas.
It's shot at Vegas. Like, apparently all of those locations are 100% real.
And it's also,
it feels like the real Vegas.
Yeah, they couched that pretty well.
It's also interesting because they use mirrors throughout the narrative symbolically. And in fact, I mean, not just mirrors themselves, but there are the moments that are mirrored in the beginning as they are in the ending with different characters in the same position. And I thought that was really neat. And I also thought there was an incredible use of breaking the 180 rule to kind of really set in that kind of dichotomy between these two characters. And what's funny is, like, I'm talking about this and I'm saying, yes, there was this fantastic use of the 180, breaking the 180 rule, and they're at a lunch table, and it's like, oh, she's mirroring who this woman wants to be, or doesn't want to be, or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like,
they're also talking about doggy chow.
They're talking about
they're casually talking about it. It's like, oh, I love dog food. Yeah, I had it all the time when I was a kid.
Gina Gershon, to her credit, I would say one of the best parts of this movie.
Her and Kyle MacLachlan are easily the best parts of this movie because they know what movie they're in. They know how ridiculous it is, and
it's so like dastardly mustache twirling. Like,
Kyle MacLachlan is too.
She has such a great time.
I know,
and I loved when they're talking about eating dog food. She turns her head and like she gets misty-eyed, reminiscing about dog food.
No,
but it's like, what the fuck am I watching?
There's that, and then there's the scene where Kyle MacLachlan near the end of the movie is like, yeah, I know all about your shady past. I've got paperwork here that shows that your father was involved in this and your mother was involved in that, and yeah you were working as a whore for. He's just so self-serious and over the top. Like, he knows if what he says is true, that he thought this was a melodrama, he is definitely taking the piss out of it 100%. And it's just you're still terrible, but you're a better kind of terrible. You're not Elizabeth Berkley terrible. Which, can we talk about why Paul Verhoeven casted Saved by the Bell girl as a compelling lead for a melodrama? Can we just talk about that for a second?
I do bring this up.
What was he thinking?
I think she's a better actress than we're giving her credit for. She has worked on other productions. She did Curse of the Jade Scorpion with Woody Allen. She's done other things. But I think it's unfair to sort of point the blame at her because, he was.
I'm not pointing to blame at her. I'm pointing to blame at the decision. Like, it's just such a weird decision to be like watching a sitcom. Is like, well, I get the impression. It's just like we need this actress to break free and work in out of their comfort role.
Why would you cast some guy who had been on an episode of The Price is Right and a few commercials to be Jesse Pinkman in Breaking Bad?
That's The Price is Right, though. That's like a family show. That's not like a display of acting.
Adam Sandler was, in Uncut Gems. I'm not really the casting isn't.
But he's already proved that he was a good dramatic actor in Punch Drunk Love. And before Punch Drunk Love, Paul Thomas Anderson saw him in his comedies. He's like, there's just something about him that fits this character. There's a nervous side to him that I really want to express. Like, there has to be something there to see in the actor in order to cast him in something else. Like, that's how casting against type works.
Yeah, I think Paul Verhoeven just thought she was very attractive. I don't know.
I mean, she is. He got that part right.
No, I don't know. And I think she is a good actress. I think what happened here was he's deliberately directing her.
Yeah, I read that. I was like, I really hope that he's just making that up and just making excuses for acting, because if you directed her to act like this, why would you do that?
I wonder if he's trying to single her out performance-wise to make her look like she's super infatuated with this Vegas dream and she's really this eccentric character who's going for it. I mean, it's hard to say exactly, and if different people were told different things about the overall production, I've heard directors do this kind of thing before, where they give different directions to different people to give them different energies, and just to see if that clashes or to see if that works together. And it's kind of an experiment, and it is a bit manipulative, but it goes for a different kind of effect. If one person's going to act over the top, the other person's going to act, understated.
And that's the other thing is, like, she's, coming from a background of Saved by the Bell, which is essentially for like school age kids. It's like, have any of you guys seen like a Disney Channel sitcom or whatever? Like, I think what he was doing, and it may have been manipulative, but I think she was bringing out some of the worst aspects of like, school TV, theater kid stuff.
Yeah, like he might have been taking a piss on that kind of idea. Like he satirizes so many things in RoboCop, and this element of satire is prominent in all of his films. So I could see this as an extension.
And I feel like with a better script, I think she could do better. I think she has done better,
and a better director.
Yeah, well,
so,
okay.
I should make a disclaimer. I didn't watch the theatrical version of this film, or not the entirety of it. Instead, what I found in my research what I found very fascinating, and I decided to really look into this, is Showgirls Redux, which is a fan edit by a woman on Vimeo called Ariel Gardner. And I think it fixes a lot of the issues that a lot of people have with this film. First off, it cuts out about 45 minutes of it.
Wow.
Which there's a lot of like little odd, silly things. And I've looked at some of the things that she's cut out, and I don't miss them either. And what she did is she injected some David Lynch music into it, amongst other different music choices. And man, it is an experience. Like, you don't get context for some scenes. I can definitely tell there's some things cut out, but it glues your eyes to the screen. I can't look away from what she's done to marry some of these scenes together. I mean, she has cuts of Rammstein and a bunch of other like metal as they're dancing, and for me that made it even hotter.
Wow, that's interesting. God. But my thing is,
what a story!
I highly recommend watching that version of the film.
That's interesting, and I always appreciate the hard work they put into those cuts. Like, it's
it
must be a pain in the ass to manage that in a way that works.
I think fan editing is, it's how the audience is brought into the conversation. It's there's a whole video going into fan edits, and I just love them because they.
Topher Grace actually ran a project there for a while where he re-edited famous Hollywood films.
Yeah.
So
did he re-edit Spider-Man 3 and take him out of it?
That's a good question. I don't know. This film, and okay, we're talking about I don't like to get into like the male gaze. All right, I try not to be a creep because I feel like as a filmmaker there's a lot of that going around. There's too much of that with like the Weinsteins and all that.
Well, here's the thing. It's hard to get out of it because you are a man with eyes.
Well, that's true.
Exactly.
Here's the thing.
All you know is male gaze.
There you go, right?
Yeah, that's a fair statement.
Unless you're a male gay, right? No, it's
Hey.
bad joke.
No, it's just a slightly augmented lens.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Same thing, though.
Now, let's be honest. There's some pretty attractive women in this. They're all like running around.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah, but here's the thing. And I think this is where I wonder how self-aware Paul was. Because there's a moment where she's giving a very seductive lap dance, and it's very exciting, and, the kind of male monkey brain, you're watching this, you're like, oh, wow, that's really
hot.
something. And then she says to the guy, and I'm paraphrasing, but I took a note here that it's something to the effect of, I can't go any further because I'm on my period. And
oh yeah, and then his excuse is his excuse is even better. I've got towels.
Yeah, and then she says, "No, I'm on my period." Check. And he puts his hand down her hand.
And then he's like, "That's fine. I'll just use some towels." It's like, no,
it's so gross. But here's my point. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm playing devil's advocate here. But maybe this is more tongue-in-cheek, and he's more a part of the joke than we realize. Maybe he's saying, but maybe he's saying that all of this vapid, sort of shallow glitz and glam is actually really ugly. And maybe it's kind of a commentary about how these people who base their entire personality about being beautiful and how their sort of existence is so shallow and vapid that in a way their whole existence is like that. It's an ugly truth. I mean, maybe I'm giving this too much credit, but I think there's something there that could maybe resonate, particularly in the age of like Instagram influencer culture, I don't know. It just there's moments. This film is so bizarre. It's
fascinating to watch. It's never boring. Say what you want about it. The film's like about 2 hours and 15 minutes, but it's like, I watched the whole thing and I never felt bored. I was questioning why it's so long, but I was never bored.
It is entertaining.
Yes, I wish there were more bad movies like it, because I disagree that a shorter cut would be better, Devin, despite all the hard work she put into it, but because this film already feels like the shorter cut. This already feels like there's so much of the film missing, because I can't stress enough how this film makes me feel like I'm in the early stages of dementia. The amount of unresolved plot lines that are just introduced out of nowhere. There's a scene where this literally happens in the stretch of a few scenes. She goes to her friend's recital and watches her dance. The next scene, she's hired as a stripper. No context in that or nothing. And the next scene after that, her friend is going to school, and she's already in the middle of she passed her 4th grade, is already halfway done? That's literally in the stretch of a few scenes. It sounds like I'm explaining a fever dream, but that's how this film is structured. Things are just introduced out of nowhere, things happen, and things get resolved after 3 minutes.
Here's the thing, Ian. I think that the shorter cut that I watched almost accentuates that fever dream element of it, because it introduces David Lynch music.
I mean, that would do it alone.
And seeing Kyle MacLachlan get a striptease with music from David Lynch just feels right,
Yeah, that's true.
It just works. It works beautifully. And I'll give you an example early on in the film that I did compare the original to this one. So when she's hitchhiking, she hops in the truck with this guy. They have their normal kind of introductions or whatever. He has that dumb moment where he's, swerves out of the way of this truck. That's cut out. You never learn the guy's name. You don't really need to. And as soon as, she basically realizes that he left without her, in the original film, she kind of flips out and goes crazy, and then that's when the girl shows up, and she just looks like a crazy person in the original film. But in the edited version, she cuts in some of those moments that she cut out prior, and she adds this like swelling music on top of it, and it really makes you feel like you're more in her head, going crazy. And
Okay.
it just accentuates that. But like it was that moment on that I'm like, okay, this is the version that I'm watching, just because this really passionately emphasizes moments that felt like that. What could have been just seen as a bad scene of her acting feels a lot more dramatic and a lot more,
Yeah.
you feel more involved
It
in her
shows how much of a
situation.
difference editing can make, because there
Exactly.
are so many random plot lines that are just introduced, and it seems like they're gonna matter, but they don't. Like the first time Elizabeth goes through the training to become the big dancer, and she does a perfect job. By the way, she always does a perfect job of dancing. She doesn't practice or anything. She just always magically knows the routine of whatever song or dance number they're going for. But anyways, I
Yeah.
digress. She's, doing such a perfect job, but she can't rub ice on her tits. That's too far, and she just storms out. 2 scenes later, she's accepted. Gina Gershon gets her accepted. So I'm like, okay, so there was no conflict. There was no her training and coming back and showing them all who's boss or anything, any kind of conflict or struggle. It's just 2 scenes later and it's resolved. It's like, why the fuck? Why'd you introduce that if you're just gonna resolve it like that?
And that's a very jumbled kind of turn of events, right? Because just none of those moments feel earned.
Exactly.
You add a little David Lynch music underneath, it surprisingly works.
Yeah, add a little David Lynch movie, some heavy metal.
To kind of go with what Ian was saying, it's like everybody immediately loves this character.
Oh, I know the real reason why she took this role is because every character is like, "Oh, you're such a badass. You're so hot. You're so sexy. You're so independent."
They have no reason really to like her.
She's so unlikable.
She's really not. She's a terrible, narcissistic toddler.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
She's a terrible. Like, I mean, she throws French fries in the first. Like, the woman offers to buy her a meal, and she just throws it back in her
And she
face.
slams the shake like 5 times because she's mad. Because she's mad.
Yeah, and I feel like I do feel like it does a disservice to Elizabeth Berkley because she didn't really get a lot of job opportunities after this film.
Yeah, this movie tanked her career.
I think that's unfortunate because I think, I don't think she deserved that.
No, I don't either. Despite my complaints about her acting, I think she at least deserved a second chance.
And I mean, again, I think it comes down to the direction, and I wish people had maybe a better sense of humor or a better sense of understanding as to where she was coming from. Like, it's kind of like Halle Berry in Catwoman. It's like you can't really fault Halle Berry's performance when she has to drink milk out of a bowl for
when she has to rub catnip all over her nose and her face.
Exactly. It's
like how could you make that work? Exactly. And she won an Oscar the same year.
Elizabeth Berkley is in this movie where she has to have a conversation with a guy who has to say with a straight face, everybody got AIDS and shit.
Or I see you hiding from what? Hiding from you.
She looks as good as a 10-inch dick.
The writing is so... No, what it is people writing about sexy people that has never met a sexy person or a person that's worked in the sex field in their life.
I will say one point against the version that I saw. I was deprived of those absurd cringe lines that are kind of hilarious.
Yeah, they make it so
a lot of the stupid shit is cut out of Ariel's version of it.
Oh,
it is good. It does make for a compelling, weird psychosexual drama.
You need to go back and watch the full version.
Oh,
and you should do vice versa.
Yeah, I will. You need to see the full Monty on Showgirls.
Oh, heyo.
We'll get
Oh,
to that
man.
soon. Don't worry.
Oh, that's
yeah.
to go off of what you said earlier, Steven. Like the character is so unlikable. Like they skip 6 weeks at the start of the story, and I thought, oh, I know why. So you don't have to develop a friendship with this girl whatsoever. Like the rest of the
Well,
movie,
they
they're
don't
like
even
best
need to develop
friends.
it.
They're
The very first moment she meets her, she just loves her. She's
she
like,
almost
okay,
makes
come and
out
live
with
at
her.
my house.
She almost makes out with her. My mom is like, "Are you guys gonna fuck or what?" While she was watching this movie with me,
Yeah.
because there
Oh,
was so
dude.
much awkward sexual tension in this movie. That's all it
and
is. It's awkward sexual tension, melodrama, and boobs. The movie.
And that's why I think it's just a perfect film.
Oh yeah, me
You
too.
know,
It's
what
art.
more could you
It's
want,
art,
you
man.
know?
It's art.
That's a Norm Macdonald joke. He actually
Oh yeah.
he said on Weekend Update that the new film Showgirls is trying to remember exactly the joke, but it was something about it's basically big
It's a
budget
thinly
porn.
veiled. It's a thinly veiled something. Yeah.
Yeah, thinly veiled attempt to just show as much ass and legs and breasts as possible, and it's essentially high budget porn with terrible
Legitimately.
acting. And he said that's why I'm giving it a 10 out of 10.
Legitimately, like this weirdly reminded me of David Cage's like worst games. Not like his decent stuff like Heavy Rain, but like Beyond Two Souls, where every part of the movie, every ounce of it, every little piece of structure feels like it's only there to build up to melodrama with a capital M or boobs. Like that's all it is. There's so much conflict that comes up out of nowhere. Like the one girl that's like a total bitch to like this other girl for no reason. We have no establishment of why they hate each other or why they're even like this, but it just feels like an excuse. It's like, alright, we can have a really dramatic fight and we can have boobs because girls cat fighting is hot, and everything just feels like an A and B to melodrama. Nothing connects in any way to make sense.
This was the one thing that I did want to bring up. So, in film analysis, there's something called the Bechdel test.
They do pass
it. They do pass the Bechdel test. Now, for those at home who are not familiar, the Bechdel test is to tell if a movie is feminist. And so the way that it's a feminist film.
No, or if they just have good female characters. I thought it was
sure. So do you have two female characters? Yes. Do they talk to each other during the film? Yes.
Yes.
Do they talk to each other about something other than the male characters? Yes. Now, they are talking about how much they love Doggy Chow, but
they passed the test, and that's all that matters.
This film is a feminist masterpiece.
Yeah, legitimately.
It's I don't know, and the acting is like, you know what the acting reminded me of? What? Have you guys seen Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
I haven't, but I heard it's a good movie.
Been on my list for some time.
It's okay. It's one of the best films ever made. I mean, and it's definitely in a different ballpark than this, but the acting is very over the top hysterics, especially because it's delivered by Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, and it's a very it's almost structured like a play. And so, I mean, what's interesting is, that film definitely earns its more over-the-top sort of campy elements. And this maybe does the worst of those moments.
It almost feels like Paul watched movies like that growing up and tried his best to replicate it with something like Showgirls. Like, the thing with RoboCop and Starship Troopers... Say what you want about them, I'm not the biggest fan, but at least they feel like they have some passion put into them. They have hurt, the cast clearly cared, there's some cool special effects they clearly put a lot of work into. There's some hurt and passion behind those films. Despite the fact I'm not really a fan of what they go for, I can still appreciate what they accomplish by the end of it. This movie just doesn't have that same vibe to me. It just feels like, whatever, we'll make the closest to porn without technically being porn. Whatever, let's just get these plot lines over with. I don't care. Like, there's just no passion here. That's part of what makes it hilarious, but also part of why it's such a mess.
And that's also the thing that I was talking about. It's like, does he know what he's making, or is this like, is this like a big joke? And I feel like if I knew one way or the other for certain, I would rate this film lower. Because there's something about not knowing, and there's something about the moments where the film just almost kind of feels like it's in on the joke, and then the moments where it's definitely not aware at all. I feel like they sort of complement each other, because this film is essentially a very well-made, polished turd in a sense. It's
100%.
terrible, but it's something that it's like a train wreck. I can't take my eyes off of it, and
it's an enigma.
It has this bizarre, campy, just absurdity to it, and I fell in love with it. And I think it's something about, like in the news, this was in the news that Deborah Messing made a comment about why is Kim Kardashian hosting Saturday Night Live, and that's something that, has been a criticism of the Kardashian family for a long time. It's like, well, they don't sing, they don't dance, they don't act. Like, why do they have their own show? Why are they treated as celebrities? And so this film to me is kind of like, it almost satirizes that kind of commentary of like, no, they're just like, they're shallow, they're vapid. These people are benefiting from their perceived attractiveness and maybe the reality they surround themselves in. Once you peel back the surface, the exterior, it's not as pretty as you would think. I don't know. And again, maybe I'm giving this film too much credit, but it's like Devin said, it's an enigma. It's like a train wreck. You can't look away. And so it's this giant dumpster fire has earned my respect in a sense.
Well, it's kind of what I said about Tammy and the T-Rex way back. Like, it's so hard to tell if it's trying to be like a genuine B horror movie or if it's just in on the joke. And because of that, it just makes it so fascinating to watch. And I don't want to know any of the behind the scenes of this movie, just like with Tammy and the T-Rex, because just wondering what happened and what the hell went wrong in the behind the scenes is just so much more fascinating to me. Like, there's sequel bait at the end of this movie. Spoiler alert, there's sequel bait. She's going to another city. Like, why is there sequel bait in this kind of movie? Why is there sequel bait in this satirical masterpiece, this critique of our culture? Do you want to be a satire, or do you want to be a movie that makes money? I don't know. Parts like that make it fascinating to me.
And it's interesting, it's sequel. It's like sequel bait in the original cut, with the music sheet that they use. And I won't spoil anything, but it really makes it feel like she's kind of just back where she started, and it's just been this absurd journey that she's been on. What I liked about the film is how much passion it's inspired by fans, people who are as perplexed as we are, looking at this thing and trying to figure it out. And maybe there is something to not know, like knowing the thing, but I almost feel like that shorter cut almost enhances the mystery even further in some ways. But
well, and it's also I do think that it's worth mentioning this film has been surprisingly embraced by the gay community, like the LGBT. And I know this because I actually went the extra mile. I watched a documentary on this film.
What was the name of it again?
You Don't Know Me, from 2018.
Perfect name for it.
Good title.
Yeah, exactly. And it talks about the making of the film and, cast and crew kind of interviews and stuff. And it was interesting to me that the film has had such a warm reception and a renewed interest from the LGBT community because Basic Instinct, if you guys remember, Paul Verhoeven's other film, was boycotted because they thought that its portrayal of a bisexual woman was, hurtful, that she was like a villain. And of course, Spetters,
isn't that the same
Paul
in this movie?
Yeah, Paul Verhoeven's Spetters film was like critically panned because it was homophobic. They actually assault a man and dress him as a woman and humiliate him. So I think it's bizarre how that people can take something and maybe reclaim it or make it into something new. And I don't know. It's a really just bizarre film, and there's not a really good answer to what was going on in Verhoeven's head, and I hope I don't know ever. But so yeah, it's wow.
It is something fascinating for sure. Daryl
Yes.
Ailes, who recommended this episode, is listening to us right now. Hey Daryl, do you have any thoughts on this strange, bizarre disaster piece that is Showgirls? And if so, feel free to unmute yourself.
Do, 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 do,
Oh,
do.
yeah, running
Hey.
around to get my headphones. Jeez.
Hey, it's all good.
Sorry.
It's all good.
Yeah. Also kind of anticlimactic. I've never seen Showgirls, so I don't have too much to add. But it sounds fucking wild.
I
You've
recommend it.
never seen it?
I recommend it.
No.
And you're the one that suggested it.
Yeah. I just threw it out there, man. It fit my. It was all a ruse to get you guys to watch the full Monty. Really.
Wow.
Hey.
Well, it worked as a trilogy. I think this is a kind of
Yeah.
weird scope of the three, especially now that I know more details. So,
Oh.
Showgirls and some of the scenes in there. But I'm actually quite interested in the redo that you've talked about. Evan.
You should watch the original.
Watch both
and then-
versions.
Yeah, watch both.
I may have to get really drunk and watch the original from the sounds of things.
Probably.
You'll
I think
feel
that
like
would
you're
probably
drunk
help,
watching
yeah.
it. Like, you don't even need beer.
I think you'll definitely want to be sober when you watch the Redux version. Is it
Okay.
Redux or Redo? I
I have
forget.
no clue.
Redux.
Redux.
Gentlemen, should we give this a rating?
Yes. Why don't you go first, Stephen?
Well, as I said, this has earned my respect. I'm giving it a 10 out of 10.
Yes.
Incredible.
I'm so tempted to give it a 10 out of 10, but
Amazing.
it doesn't have
Do
it does have a T-Rex, so I can't do it. Sorry. So I'll be more honest. It's a well-polished turd, but man, is it a giant turd. Not all sometimes pretty visuals can't cover up a disaster. Sometimes it just shows the flaws underneath even more. What am I talking about? This film gets a 3 out of 10. Easy.
Wow. So like I said, I haven't seen the theatrical version proper in its entirety, uninterrupted. But this redo version that I keep plugging, this Redux, I highly recommend. It is such a fascinating fever dream of a film. Great use of music. There is some sound kind of clashes in there, but she's taking the finished version of the film and trying to edit those scenes down. So it's not like she's working with the raw audio track.
And she's doing it
whatever.
all on her own. On
And
top of that.
again, I love fan edits. I love the kind of bringing the audience into the conversation. People who are passionate about a thing, but just want to fix one or two things and put their own vision into it. And it's almost like if Verhoeven and David Lynch made this film together. It's such a wild trip of a movie. That version, I'm giving a comfortable 6.9.
What would you give this based on what you heard? The original cut?
I'm probably gonna 6.9 also. There's probably enough enjoyable elements in there that I'd have fun with it, but
Alright,
it's not
perfect. 10 out of 10, 6.9 and a free. This will be interesting in the group rankings.
That's pretty much every episode, honestly.
But I'm glad we talked about it. I wish there were more bad movies like it, where it's not just studio-made, bland, boring crap, just like a genuine attempt at making some kind of statement and commentary and just failing epically at it. Like, I really want more bad movies like that.
When you do go see the Redux version, which you're going to do, read the description of her thought process going behind it. She initially kind of intended it as a joke, but eventually, as she got into it, she really got passionate about the project, and it's just really fascinating to hear what elements she was good with and what elements she wanted to change in it. So I highly recommend it. Again, that's Ariel Gardner on Vimeo. Go check it out.
Ariel Gardner.
Definitely.
All right, I'll be sure to add a link to the description of the YouTube video as well. So those at home can look into the Showgirls Redux, and it's completely free. And does it have tits in it?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, it does, and it's just on YouTube.
It wouldn't be Showgirls without the tits. If anything,
Wow. It's on Vimeo
with
not
Rensky
YouTube.
underneath
it's
of
on
it.
Vimeo.
Like,
okay.
if anything, it makes it more German, or Dutch, I guess.
Yeah, it makes it more authentic to the culture. Anyways, next
and
up.
That's another thing.
Speaking of Europe.
Well, yeah. There you go.
So
I was just gonna say that Paul Verhoeven does a lot of horny movies like this. Like Total Recall with the three-breasted woman.
It was the 80s. A lot of 80s and early
go.
90s movies were very horny, so that's also a product of its time. Speaking of England and horny people, it's time to talk about the Full Monty. Who wants to introduce this one? Devin, do you want to introduce this, or Magic Mike?
I'll give it a go.
Sweet. Spoiler alert for the Full Monty.
So the Full Monty is a 1997 film made by a director whose work I'm not really familiar with. I'm not even sure how to pronounce his last name. Peter Catand. I'm probably butchering that. Anyway, Catania. So I'm gonna read the description on the back of the DVD, because anytime I actually have it physically in my hand, I'm just gonna read what's on there. 6 unemployed men, inspired by a touring group of male strippers, decide they can make a small fortune by putting on a striptease show of their own, but with one small difference: they intend to go full Monty and strip completely naked. In this hilarious, heartfelt comedy, these 6 friends discover the inner strength to bear it all in front of the world. This, quote, enticingly funny, ... crowd-pleasing comedy, David Anson, Newsweek, features the music of Donna Summer, Gary Glitter, Sister Sledge, and Tom Jones. 1997, color approximately 95 minutes. So this DVD I've had around the house for like 15 years, and it was never opened. We just had it. I don't know where it came from, and it felt good to finally open the seal on there. And it was fully sealed too. Like it was the Full Monty in design, and also this was back when DVD cases was like the full case too. It didn't have that cutout to say this is recyclable and also easier to damage. This is a great movie. This is if you want to show a stripper film and watch it with the family, with your parents in the room, this is the one to watch. It's just a delightful movie. It's actually makes it kind of wholesome. So like, these guys worked at a steel steel factory, and they're not getting work anymore. Feels kind of relatable, meaning to me in my situation, where I worked in a factory, but I've been on work stoppage for the longest time, and they decided to go full Monty to bring big bucks in. And there are just so many unexpected comedic moments that was oddly wholesome, in spite of what its content was. It's kind of an underrated movie, I find.
Yeah.
And there's some scenes in it that I really connected with that I'll get to in a bit. But what did you guys think of this movie?
Well, I saw this movie a long time ago, and outside of one scene, and I think it's like the scene that's quoted and referenced the most, the scene when they're in line to get a new job and they begin dancing. Like, that's like the only scene I remember. But I saw this movie recommended. I'm like, the Full Monty. I remember seeing that, but I don't remember anything about it. And I was really worried at first, because usually that means I don't remember anything about it for a good reason. A, because it was terrible. B, because it was just so boring and unspecial, at least at the time when I watched it. But seeing it again, and the way I describe it is nice. Like, it's a very nice movie, not in a sexual way, but in like a comfort way. Like, it's comfort food. I kind of described it as the horny, poverty-stricken, feel-good chicken soup for the soul. And it's partially a joke, but it's, it applies as well. I don't think it deserved its 10 Oscar nominations. It definitely has its problems. It's very cliche. It's kind of forgettable. But it's also very well done, very wholesome, very entertaining. It knows exactly what it is. It doesn't try to be anything harder than that, which was incredibly refreshing after seeing Showgirls. What about you, Steven?
I don't know. I think that there's something there. I feel like maybe there's something under the surface that maybe I'm missing. I don't know. I kind of had a similar reaction to you, that I mean, for starters, I mean, this was 1997. It was released, or it was nominated for Best Picture of 1997,
and 10 other
and
nominations.
that was the same year that Boogie Nights came out. And I'm sorry, but
Oh,
this film is
I
not
see.
better.
I see. That's the reason why you hate this
Titanic.
film.
Also,
That is
Hack.
this film is not better than Boogie Nights.
It's not
Like, I'm
at
sorry.
all. No.
You know, it's interesting. I think that I wasn't really wowed by the technical elements. I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
I think that there's some interesting social commentary. I think this film was probably set, or I know this film was set during the sort of backdrop of the Margaret Thatcher era, and it sort of plays with, you know, masculinity and our perception of it. And I appreciated that. I thought that was some good commentary. I thought that was done well and respectfully. I liked Mark Addy's character, struggling with his body image.
yes.
This is one of
Yes,
the
that was
only
great.
films that I've seen tackle that. And for
In a
what
way
it's
that
worth, I
wasn't
thought that
preachy. That's the big part
well,
of it.
it wasn't preachy, but it was very well done, and it was respectful, and
Was.
I there was something
And-
about that I connected with. But the other characters I didn't really connect with at all.
I agree with you on that somewhat. I think Guy and
Robert-
Lomper, like the gay couple in the movie, they felt incredibly underdeveloped. Like when they were getting together, I was just like, did they even share a scene together? Like I don't know why they're getting together. I don't know why I should care. Like they felt really
think that was
underdeveloped compared to the
something
rest of
that
the
was-
cast.
Yeah, and I think that was something that was more of a product of its time, because a lot of 80s and 90s films, and I kind of noted this about the other character, it's like there were moments in 80s and 90s films where the other characters weren't as fleshed out or particularly like expanded on, other than like
The main trio.
well, like with Ghostbusters is a good example. Like, I love Ernie Hudson, but in the original Ghostbusters, he's kind of just like
He's there.
the black guy.
Yeah,
You know?
he's just
it's
there.
like no, and he's just there, and I hate that, because I think he's a great actor, and if you see him in something like The Crow, or you know, something where he actually gets to kind of flex his muscles, as far as acting, he's fantastic. But you know, this film kind of fell into that for me, because there's also a black character in this, and we don't really know much about him.
Horse.
Yeah, Horace. Yeah, we don't really know much about him.
Why they
His
call him Horse?
yeah, exactly. There's two gay characters. You could blink and miss the fact that they're gay.
You could blink and miss the fact that he's part of a band too. Like that, was that ever established? Like what? Why was that not fleshed out?
There's also the character whose entire personality is just that he has a large penis, and it's like so
it's done as a joke, and it's like once the joke is over, there's just nothing to offer.
That's the only development he ever gets, and it never comes into play again.
It's annoying because like the other characters are pretty well developed. Like I actually have to say, Tom Wilkinson's character Gerald was my favorite, like by far. Because like the typical manager character in this is like, you know, he's a dickhead, he's rude to like the other workers, and you know, he's just kind of an uptight asshole, like he deserves it, but like he clearly feels bad about what he did to the other workers. And when you learn about his family and how he had to lie to his wife for 6 months, like I felt really bad for the guy. They did such a great job of making him like a more fleshed out, interesting character, and he was like a fantastic addition to the cast. That's when I was like, yeah, this film is alright too. Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Well, I mean, and like particularly the Robert Carlyle character, I think the film wanted me to really root for him.
Yeah,
but for whatever reason, I couldn't. I didn't really connect with him, and I found myself. This is the thing. I found myself doing the opposite. I was kind of rooting against him.
Yeah,
because
it's a little bit tropey, like the whole, oh, I gotta get my kid back and make enough money so I could see
no,
my
it's
kid
not.
again and get rid of this
No,
dumb
it's not
ex-husband.
even necessarily. It's not even necessarily that it's tropey. It's just like his whole arc is, yes, I want custody of my son. I want to see him. Um, okay, that's a decent motivation, but it's like, well, the kid's mom is right. Like he is an ex-con. He does expose the kid to full frontal male nudity
Constantly, like at the end, even he's
constantly.
like, you should have been like, all right, don't watch this, but he just lets him watch. I'm like, that's not okay.
He's like helping Judge, and he's kind of desensitized the whole thing. And he says, "So your dad strips in front of you?" And he's like, "Only when he's rehearsing."
Like it's funny, but it's also like, why should I care?
And they just kind of glaze over that. It's interesting, there's this comment that the characters kind of feel underdeveloped a little bit. And this was a commentary. I actually found an interview with the cinematographer from the film. This was on Cook, like the lenses that the film is shot with are Cook lenses. They have interviews with the cinematographers that have brand loyalty to their glass. But he was talking about, the some insights of this film, and what he was saying is that the challenge with this film, the challenge is that there's like 6 leads, and so you're trying to get like coverage of everybody in close-ups, and you're kind of panning across between all of them. And something that was funny first thing in the morning isn't funny by the end of the day. So you're kind of, I think he even said this, like bullshitting yourself to keep the energy up, to between all the different takes and setups and whatnot, to
excuse me,
to get coverage. So I think maybe part of that might have been what was dragging this film down, is by so evenly looking at everybody, and maybe it was something lacking in the writing. I'm not sure exactly what the issue was, but yeah, there was something to that maybe was kind of missing, that could have elevated the film even further. That said, I think it's still an enjoyable film, and it does have some interesting things to say. But maybe there's just a little extra something that it just didn't quite have.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, Danny Boyle was approached originally to direct this, which he turned down because he said the script didn't impress him.
Interesting. But I think, like you mentioned, the 90 minutes holds this film back so much. Like you mentioned Boogie Nights, Steven, but that film also has 2.5 hours to like fully flesh out its characters and its themes.
Well, yeah,
this movie only has 90 minutes, and that's including credits, so they probably just had to brush by everything really fast. They probably had to cut a lot of content out.
Well, I feel like
and
part
I
of
do
that
feel kind of
doesn't
bad.
overstay its welcome either. Like
That's true.
I think 90 minutes can be an excellent runtime if you really, chock it full of stuff, where it doesn't feel like it's outstaying its welcome, but it's also not cutting things down too short. Like,
well, the other thing, and I mean, I do want to kind of acknowledge something here. I mean, to be fair, there is a scene in Showgirls where there's 2 children running around the dressing room. Okay, I will admit that.
I mean, if you're comparing it to Showgirls, of course this movie's gonna seem better.
Well, no, what I'm saying is Showgirls, to me, that's like such a totally different category of film. Whereas
there's also the scene where there's the monkeys break in to the dress rehearsal.
Yeah, right.
Which,
no, but this doesn't have, like, I mean, that's where it's kind of that suspension of disbelief that Showgirls doesn't necessarily ask of me. I mean, it's over the top and it's silly and it's goofy, but this film kind of wants me to take that moment seriously.
I don't argue it's
more
silly
sincere.
It's more sincere.
Well, but look, no mother is going to let her son go to a bar and hang out with male strippers and sit in the audience and be like totally fine with it. I'm sorry, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, why did she bring the kid along? Like, if she just went on her own, that would have been fine.
And it's like 5 minutes after they talk about the fact that he no longer has custody.
I know. It's that running time getting in the way. If they had more time to flesh that out and maybe have a heart-to-heart between him and the wife, even. Like, I feel like that could have added so much more, but of course they just had to rush through things.
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe it is the pacing. It's just that I think it's like I think it's fine. It's not something that I would
Yeah, it's good.
particularly
You know.
Yeah, it's not something that I would particularly revisit. I didn't love it, but I also didn't hate it. You know,
It's kind of just there. It happened,
it's
but there's a lot
yeah,
to appreciate
it's
about it too, though. Like the
There's
soundtrack
no,
is
and
really
I
great.
know this is
the
the type of
soundtrack is
movie that my
incredible.
parents would want to rewatch and rewatch because it's very funny and amusing.
Yeah, it's got a great
Yeah,
soundtrack. Apparently, this movie is very iconic for its music. It's nice to have a bunch of songs that are like actually fit the mood instead of just being lol sexy music for men funny. Like they actually thought about picking music that fit the scene, and that's really nice. The cast is great. Like their comedic timing is really good. They did a great job of at least casting people that played off each other really well, even if they aren't fully fleshed out. And a lot of the scenes where they're together and practicing was hysterical. Like the scene when they're just dancing at the drive-in, and you see it's not just like a silly scene. It's also like, you know, it reflects the different characters. Like Tom Wilkinson isn't into it at first. The main character is just watching and being entertained. Guy is the first to go. Like it's like, okay, it's not just a silly scene, but there's character to it. You know, there's personality. I can always appreciate little details like that. It's very well done movie. It doesn't do anything
it,
spectacularly, but it doesn't really need to either.
yeah. There's also, I mean, Mark Addy, I think, really does, and Robert Carlyle, even though
Yeah,
I wasn't a fan of his
he is a
character.
great actor
uh,
though, so he
they're
carries
they're
it.
very good actors, and some of the jokes, admittedly, did land. There's one moment where I think it's Mark Addy says something like, "There's no cream for being a fat bastard" or something.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
so many
funny.
great like British insults.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of British humor, but it's also like it's funny and it
It's very
You know,
works.
witty.
And
it's funny you mentioned. So it is very British humor, and they use a lot of British slang. But I can get what they're saying like 99% of the time, and even
yeah,
the words I don't know, like context is enough of a clue. But apparently, back during the theatrical release of this, they had pamphlets printed out for American for Americans, some of the meaning of some of the slang words, uh, just in case people couldn't
the,
follow along with it. Which reminds me of
that's
when
funny.
they when they printed out certain words for David Lynch's Dune, because there's a lot of inside references to the whole Dune universe and things that they have their own mythology there. But it's just funny to me how
I hope that carries over to the Denis Villeneuve film.
Oh, he's gonna reference the original
oh
film
god.
for sure. There's gonna
I
be at
mean,
least a
Ah,
couple.
I think the people that go see the film are people that are mostly clued into what Dune is and what a Dom Jabbar is and all these other, there's tens of thousands of years of mythology behind what happens in Dune. But I think
yeah,
the people that are going to go see it are mostly clued into what that whole thing is.
Hmm.
yeah.
For sure.
So I mean, it's yeah, it was a decent film. Again, I didn't really feel strongly one way or the other. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's funny. I mean, there's some moments of real humor. There's some great performances.
I
Some of the
think it has a
characters,
lot of heart, like a lot of honest kind of heart to it.
yeah,
And I
I
want
think so.
I want to come back to the one character who was having body issues, body image issues. So he was trying to hide from his wife, that he was stripping what he was doing, and she thought that he was, cheating on her. And he comes clean to her, and he says, "Well, that he's deciding to not go do that because he wants to see this, like go out and dance." And she says, "I do." And I honestly
Yeah,
nearly teared up at that moment. That felt
That was
so
great.
heartfelt, and that's an insecurity that so many men have that is never talked about in film. It's normally fat people are laughed at for being fat, but that felt like a very sincere moment. That really, I really felt that
That
because
was yeah,
yeah,
and that scene too works because you expect it to be totally contrived the way that she's like, oh, she thinks he's doing something nasty, but he's really doing something innocent. Teehee. But it makes
and
perfect sense that the way she feels that way, like all of the clues are there for her to think he's cheating on her. Like, it
No, yeah.
actually makes sense in the context of the story. I'm glad they didn't just pull some bullshit like
There's
Showgirls would go to add some
There's
emotion to
honestly
the
some
scene.
clever writing here that I think we take for granted as being just normal stuff. But I think a lot of screenwriters getting into this stuff can learn from the screenplay with its unassuming kind of story how it all builds toward kind of the end scene. Everything ties up in kind of a neat bow, which maybe isn't the kind of films we normally look for. We normally like something that leaves some things unanswered and lingers on, but everything kind of gets set up and pays off. There's a great video by a channel that I posted, and it's kind of a funny title when you considering the movie, but it's called Unity to Climax. But no, it's talking about how everything in the film established pays off, and it all leads up to this moment at the end of the film. And that might be standard Hollywood stuff, but there's a lot of like little nuances of the writing that establish that and lead up to that moment. I feel like maybe we're not giving this film quite enough credit because we've seen this kind of thing before. I am curious, Daryl, what were you excited about showing us this film that maybe we talked about or haven't talked about?
Everything you just said, Devin. Like that was like it was like everything had pretty much been touched on. I was like, nah, okay, I can go into like a little bit about Mark Addy's character and like what it meant to kind of see that on screen, especially at such a young age, because like that really did kind of hit me at like that age. I don't know. I was a pudgy little kid in grade.
How old were you when you saw this?
Oh,
how old were you when you saw this? Grade 8, okay.
Yeah, soon after it came out sometime. I mean, no, that would have been a few years. But my mom loves British shit. Like, she loved it always growing up. And that story about finding that DVD with the wrapping, like, that is, like, I feel that, man. Like, that's
we've had it around the house for 15 years, and we've just never opened it. And I'm glad that we did.
Totally. And my mom is, like, the total person who has this soundtrack on CD. Like, she owns like 3 fucking CDs. 2 of them are Michael Bublé and the other one is full Monty. So like
mom has all the El Divo CDs and maybe one Trans-Siberian Orchestra for Christmas.
Yeah, man. And it's that selective, like, something really hits a note. And I totally agree with what you say. There's a lot of stuff we take for granted with a story like this. And I do agree with all your criticisms. I definitely threw that out there as like I don't know. I just have like a lot of core movies that I really enjoy, and I feel like nobody would ever bring up or talk about that. It interested me to see what you guys would kind of pull from it. So hearing all these criticisms about too many characters and stuff, like it really, you are right. And I think it does, like kind of like Devin saying, like they're spending so much time making those top 3 a priority that it starts to put the others in the background to the, to the edges of development. And yeah, no, you guys nailed it. I love all the there's not a real like heavy negative opinion. I think you guys really saw the good parts of it, and like every moment you mentioned that stuck with you are the same ones that stick with me to this day. Yeah, and honestly, Devin, though, you kind of blew my mind a bit when you compared it to that building to a final scene shit, because it's like, honestly, man, like I feel like that influenced me in ways I didn't even realize. Because like,
I mean, it's one of those story things that we take for granted in a well put together screenplay. Yeah. It's kind of standard, but people that don't know about screenwriting or trying to figure things out, it's such a helpful kind of, here's how you build towards something. Totally. And I can't take credit for that idea. I totally got that from a video, but I'm gonna post that. If you look up Full Monty Unity to Climax,
yeah,
it's a very fitting phrase for the movie. But this movie 100% exemplifies that. This is something that, for like filmmaking, screenwriting 101, is a good film to break down, because it's easy to break down and easy to see the building blocks of it, and you can kind of apply that to your own film and make it crazier or whatever, right?
Totally, but I think it really it exemplifies that specific structure that you're referencing. It's like you need to have some kind of confidence in your story to reach a point where you can just cut to, like, it's epilogue-less, right? And I think a lot of movies, like, fuck, could you imagine if Lord of the Rings had an epilogue? Like, it's sometimes you get both with like an Inception, but like I think like the building to a final crescendo, like it lies in so many of my favorite films, and I never really put it together until So you mentioned that. So if anything, that is a fucking great takeaway from all of this conversation. So yeah, really stoked to hear what you guys had to say about it. That was genuinely entertaining to listen to.
Oh, thanks, man. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Yes, thank you for
the thoughts.
thank you for recommending this.
Yeah.
You know, I will say that I definitely had a similar experience. I was definitely a little fat kid when I was round.
Now I'm a big fat kid.
Now I have a dad bod. Oh, so.
Like anyways, ratings.
Now.
Yeah.
Oh god.
And ladies, I'm single. So if you're watching,
and
this,
you're signaling.
Signaling. Yeah,
yes,
there you go.
Single virtue
Freudian.
signaling.
I want to be your virtue signal.
Just one quick thing I wanted to mention. You guys mentioned like the issues of like the male body and masculinity, but there's also issues of the working class and like how hard it is to find a job in a strict environment, and how people's lives could be really screwed over from a mass layoff, and the amount of time you have to wait before working again can be extreme. Something very relatable to the COVID climate, so that was like a neat little addition to the film. That's
what made this film so prevalent to me. And I'm currently in the middle of a work stoppage where I'm not, going to work, which is giving me more time to do this, which is cool. But at the same time, got to pay them bills.
Yeah,
and
money, please.
I don't know. Now I'm considering stripping.
It also helps, and I thought about this. It might help, with a repeat viewing, to kind of give context to a lot of the Margaret Thatcher era. I think that's maybe a part of history that I'm maybe not as familiar with, but I feel like that might enhance repeat viewings.
And I think that's
have that. Yeah,
I think that's part of why it might have been nominated for so many awards in its time, and why we look back and find that puzzling, because, and the movie might have been tapping into the zeitgeist at that moment, so it becomes award worthy, but it doesn't win any of them, and then it's kind of just forgotten about. And then we look back and we see Boogie Nights came out that year. Boogie Nights is this huge explosion of critique of the porn industry of the 70s, and that might have been just for too much for general audiences to handle at that time. It's only reflecting on it many years later that we can appreciate that film for what it is.
Well, and it's also weird where you have films like Boogie Nights, or John Carpenter's The Thing, that they come out and the audience reaction or the critical reception is mixed, and then they become classics. But then you have films like Forrest Gump or, American Beauty, where they get worse with age. So this isn't really either, but it's kind of interesting, I mean, it's...
Yeah. And I mean, all these movies lost to Titanic in '97. Titanic kind of...
Yeah, I have a fun bit of trivia about that. So Tom Wilkinson was originally asked to be in Titanic, and he gave up Titanic to be in this movie.
Wow.
And I was just thinking, what a boss. I'll choose a good movie instead of your Oscar-worthy trash. I'll dance with silly British people, thank you very much. Made me respect the actor that much more.
I would have taken the Oscar. Sorry.
No, I would have kept my dignity and do a movie that's actually good and fun. That's my thoughts on Titanic. Anyways, final thoughts on the film, Monty?
Titanic wasn't terrible. We should do an episode.
Yeah, that would be an interesting discussion.
You should do 3 movies that were put on double VHS
tape. Titanic 2, Titanic: The Legend Goes On.
Oh no. No. What about Titanic, Ghost Ship, and I don't know, fucking something else. There's something.
Yeah, Ghost Ship doesn't have a scene of a guy punching an explosion, so I'm good. Titanic 2.
Leonardo DiCaprio could have definitely fit on that door. She was so selfish.
We'll save that discussion for another time.
Yes. Moving on. Shall we rate this?
Yes. I'm giving this one a 6.9 out of 10. Hey, had to do it for one movie, but I feel like it fits the most with this one, so feel pretty comfortable giving it a 6.9. It's nothing special. It's kind of forgettable, but it's also very well done, very endearing, very heartfelt, and the cast definitely does love the legwork to make this movie really work for me. So yeah, 6.9 out of 10. Technically a 7.
This is a movie that I'm pretty sure my parents are gonna rewatch any opportunity that let's watch. Let's sit down and watch something together. Like there's always that group of movies that the family can watch together and everybody enjoys. But I'm probably gonna end up rewatching it so many times. So I'm just gonna give it an 8 just to save my sanity. No, it's honestly good, and I feel like there's a lot in it that we take for granted. And in that interview with the cinematographer, that one scene that you remembered, Ian, with them kind of dancing while standing in line, they originally had so many other setups planned for that scene, but they covered it in basically 2 shots. And he was talking about how, just keeping it simple for that scene, that one shot just had all the energy in it that scene needed, and it became an iconic moment.
Yeah, it didn't outstay its welcome.
By the way, every single actor in this film actually got naked at the end. They did the full Monty.
That's true. Same with Magic Mike.
That is commitment. I would just say, I'm kind of with Ian for the most part. I think it's well done. I think some parts of it were better than others. I really connected with the Mark Addy character and his issues of body image. The other characters weren't as fleshed out. I really wasn't a fan of Robert Carlyle's character, and I think the film maybe wanted me to be, but it's well made and it's passable, and it's maybe it would be better on repeat viewings or with better context of the time. So I'm going to give it a 6.9.
Nice. Last but not least, guess it's my turn to introduce Magic Mike.
Oh yeah, he gave it an 8. Okay.
Yeah, he gave it an 8. That's all good.
It's great.
It is great, mate. All right. I see a lot of lawbreakers here tonight as we talk about Magic Mike. Film I've been putting off for quite some time, but here we go. So, Magic Mike is a Steven Soderbergh film, a director that's infamous for not only handling Hollywood projects in a very experimental way, but also for kickstarting a lot of his own projects lately. This film only had a budget of $7 million. A large majority of that budget was community funded or funded by the actors and stars in the movie. Barely had any involvement with Warner Brothers whatsoever. Same with Logan Lucky, same with Unfriended. Oh, sorry, no, not Unfriended, but the movie he shot on an iPhone. I forget what it's called, but that was also done with very low budget. Unsane, thank you. Unsane.
What a dumb name.
Magic Mike, and you think that style of filmmaking would not be appropriate for a film about strippers, but you'd be wrong, because Magic Mike is a thing. It exists. So it's about a male stripper, played by Channing Tatum, and he teaches a young performer how to party, pick up women, make easy money. But as they go throughout the story, they learn that, the stripper business might be a bit more corrupt than it may seem. And they get into more trouble throughout, and particularly the younger performer who goes a bit off the rails towards the end of the story. And that's pretty much Magic Mike. There really isn't much to the plot whatsoever beyond, Channing Tatum's internal struggles of deciding either or not he wants to be in the business, why he's in the business in the first place, and between that is lots of stripping that makes me question my sexuality. But that's Magic Mike.
They're good at it. You can say that much. They're good at it.
That's true.
They definitely trained.
Channing Tatum, apparently, my mother was telling me, is an exotic dancer. He used to work as an exotic dancer. Not only him, but Joe Manganiello as well. I forgot he was in this movie. I keep thinking of him in the D&D show. And yeah, you could tell, you see the scenes that's alright, some of these dancers are way better than others. I think I know which ones have had experience and which ones haven't. But, before I get into my thoughts, what do you guys think of Magic Mike?
Well, I'll say this. Going into this was probably the film that I was least excited to see, because same. I had this sort of preconceived idea that this was going to be like a chick flick. I kind of had a different version of this film in my head,
I feel like all of us have done that to an extent where we've known about it since 2012, and you've heard good things. And it's like, yeah, that looks cool. I might see that. Never, maybe.
Well, I mean, I thought this was more of like a film that a bunch of like suburban, moms, housewives would get together and watch over a bottle of wine. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that.
That's kind of what happened.
Yes, and Gone Girl.
In fairness.
Yeah, right.
Gone Girl's great though.
Yeah, it is a good movie. No, I mean, but this is a surprisingly well-made film. I think the script is a little bit by the numbers. It kind of feels a little cliche in some places. It kind of feels a little flat, but I feel like the direction really elevates it. I thought there's some really fantastic performances from Matthew McConaughey and Olivia Munn. They are like the best parts of this movie, hands down.
100%.
Hands down.
Like Matthew McConaughey, like it's one of those roles where it just looks like the actor is having a blast the entire time.
Yeah,
you could tell he was just so happy to chew up the scenery, and he came off of Mud before making this movie, so I was kind of afraid that he was gonna take it too seriously. But as soon as I just heard him doing the Lawbreakers speech and like training the new guy in the gym, and he's like, all right, so you gotta get nice and firm, you gotta do a little bit of a dance, and he's like crapping his ass, and he's having
to make love to the mirror.
Yeah, make love to the mirror. You want them to feel like they can go home to their husbands when you're all done with them. They're not gonna be able to because
it's like you made it legal. You made cheating legal because you're doing it with all of them.
Like he's basically a drill sergeant meets a cowboy meets a stripper, and he is so much fun to watch. Not just because of his bod, but because he just has this energy to his performance that's infectious.
He's a pelvic drill sergeant drilling the air.
And there's a performance just like that.
Thrusting into their subconscious.
Yeah, I feel like
this movie felt very timely when it came out, even though I didn't see it then. This was like 2012, 2013 is when I was getting into college. And when people get into college, they get a little more sexual exploring. And there's like events like at the college, at all the colleges I've been to, two of them, they always had like sex toy bingo and other, sexy things.
Oh yeah.
And this movie came out like around that same time or just before, and also 21 Jump Street. And it's like Channing Tatum was all over the place. People are either watching 21 Jump Street or Magic Mike, and I was like, Doctor looks interesting, So it seemed to be a thing happening at that time, and it was very of its time, and I couldn't be interested in anything more different than that. But going back, it's kind of interesting in seeing what these films were showing at that time period. I do think it does speak a lot for its time period.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it is a little bit dated. I mean, there's some things that maybe have aged a little bit better than others, but I do think that it's competent. I do think that it's well made. I thought that there's one scene in particular which has it's when they're high on ecstasy in the film. That I thought was really well done. There's a lot of great practical lighting and effects, and I thought it was very well earned. I thought it fit the narrative. I didn't have a lot of complaints with it. I mean, it comes and it does its job, and then the movie's over. It's well made. It's not my favorite Soderbergh at all. I would
put as good as any of his other films. I feel like our commentary might be a little shallow. We're probably not going to be penetrating too deep into the layers because there's something there's an aspect of it that maybe we just don't quite connect with, being heteronormative cisgendered men, perhaps.
Maybe
there's an element here that we're probably just not getting. And if we have any listeners of the female variety, and want to give in some insights of what this film did for you, or anybody that is tapped into that zeitgeist more than we are, feel free to give a shit in the comments for Uh,
Let us know in the
Not
comments
really
below.
We need our co-host, Alexis, I think.
oh yes, we need Alexis.
Yeah, we need her to come back and review
You-
this film.
We need some other inputs here. Daryl, I don't know if you're still listening. Is there I don't know, is there something else in this film that we're not seeing?
Have you seen it?
If you've seen this one, I don't know if you've seen this one. Is he even still listening?
Yeah, he's
Oh,
listening.
he is.
Yeah, he's on the air.
Are you talking to
Oh.
me?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
wondering if you or Jamara have any insights into this film that we are maybe not appreciating.
Jamara was saying that it's been a crazy long time since she has seen it, so
Okay.
she doesn't have too much relevant to say. I don't know. Do you have anything?
The crowd was going wild in the theater.
Well, there you
It
go.
was like,
Yeah.
middle-aged women, young women, and the one gay guy that was having the time of his life.
Yeah, see, that's what I was thinking. This is like a suburban mom film.
That's why I was saying,
Oh.
like, that's why it made so much money at the box office.
This is actually really funny. So I was talking to my younger sister today. She works part-time at a nursing home. And apparently there's just a copy of this movie sitting around the maintenance room where she works. It seems to just show up places that you don't expect. And I wonder what people at these workplaces, nurses or whatnot, are doing in their pastime. I wonder what they're watching.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was. I don't know. I think it was fine. I mean, as far as Soderbergh, I definitely prefer Haywire. I definitely prefer Contagion. I thought The Limey was way better than this.
Sex License Videotape.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fine addition to his filmography, but I don't know how much I would revisit this film or, like want to see it again. I think I'm glad I saw it just overall for the, sort of cultural effect that it had on the zeitgeist. I mean, like Channing Tatum and Jamie Foxx were both on Jimmy Kimmel performing like "I Want to Channing Your Tatum," which was a song they made up. So, it's interesting to see where the time was at. I mean, this wasn't long before, as Devin said, 21 Jump Street, and Channing Tatum was in The Hateful Eight, and there was a moment where he was like the guy. So it's interesting, and hopefully he makes a return to form in some sense. But yeah, I'm not sure I connected with this film.
Well,
as
I wonder if there's something
one gay guy vibing in the audience did.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm wondering if there's something that we're just not seeing past the spectacle of it. I mean, is Channing Tatum so huge that is it just obscuring some of the inner workings that make this film work? If it was if it was just a stripper movie, then there wouldn't be much to talk about here beyond that spectacle, which there certainly is.
I mean, I think the direction, I think the camera work is good. I think, like I said, there's a lot of practical effects.
Some great music choices.
Or lighting, music is good.
Gabriel Iglesias is in this, and he has a fun story about his casting in this, and now he was involved, being signed on as the DJ in this film. There's a great story there, and it was cool to see the film and get the context of that story, because I remember watching that clip so many times of him just talking about it, but then I never saw the film. And I'm like, oh shit, I forgot he's in this. And you should never get involved in selling ecstasy with him. That's one lesson learned from this film, because the main character buys like $10,000 worth of ecstasy pills, and then he ends up overdosing, and then these people are after him looking for money. So that's kind of an interesting side plot.
Yeah.
So
I think.
Sorry, go on.
No, I do think Olivia Munn and Matthew McConaughey are legitimately great here.
Absolutely.
The other performances are kind of there.
I think Channing Tatum
he's doing his best. And I think he's a fine actor. I'm not particularly impressed by him one way or the other.
He can be a great actor for sure.
He can, yeah. I wasn't really compelled by him necessarily here.
Yeah, he's a lot better in Logan Lucky, which was also directed by Steven Soderbergh.
Logan Lucky was fantastic.
It's a great movie, and this film was kind of painfully mediocre for me. Like, Drew was on the podcast one time, and he said something along the lines of, "The film happened, it washed over me, and then it was over." And I feel the same way about this movie. It has like some cool style to it, but even my issue with that is, Steven Soderbergh has a very experimental way of shooting things. Logan Lucky, it fit to like add tension to the scenes and add a bit of humor. Sex Lies and Videotape, it fit that movie perfectly. I'm not going to spoil why it fits. You just need to watch the movie. But here it just kind of feels like he's being experimental for the sake of being experimental, without like actually like fitting the scene. Like except for the drug scene, like that was a perfect fit for what was happening. But for the most part, it's like it just kind of feels like you're showing off. It doesn't really add anything here. And the dance scenes are like, yeah, they're entertaining, I guess. They have great music, and Matthew McConaughey gives me jungle fever. But the way they're shot is really boring. Like it's just a lot of like close-ups and like slow camera pans.
There's a lot of wide shots that capture the scene and kind of holds it in this wide. And I do think he takes a page from David Fincher in covering party scenes where there isn't actual music playing, but he has the actors shout their lines as if there is.
Yes, that I loved.
And that's a great bit of realism. I liked how diegetic all the music. Like there was no music in this that was non-diegetic, meaning there isn't music in it that the people in the film don't actually hear themselves. Everything sounds like it's being played in the room, and I thought that element of the sound mixing just grounded it more and made it more realistic.
I also noticed
I liked that aspect of that.
Sorry, I also noticed this was one of the few movies where lightning strikes and sound doesn't come till afterwards. This is one of the only movies that does that in Hollywood, and it's Magic Mike. I just wanted to point that out. But it's funny to me because like the stripper scenes are like the money shot. Like that's why a lot of people were going to see this movie, and they couldn't be shot any more boringly. Like I expected a bit more from them. Like it felt like the actors were doing the heavy lifting.
You're also straight,
quite literally.
So I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Again, there's probably elements of it that you're just not appreciating.
I mean, they're bad.
It seems like I remember when this came out, my mom was like, "Wow, this looks great." It's like, I don't know if I'm. Yeah,
but
this is not. This isn't the full Monty where you watch it in front of the whole family.
Exactly.
Oh, perfect.
The full Monty is the shipper movie you take home with you.
Yeah, and this movie is you go see it at a movie theater and don't talk about it afterwards.
Exactly. It reminds me there was a meme of a woman at a Walmart checkout, and it was her, and she's by herself, and she's the novel 50 Shades of Grey and a large cucumber. So,
yep. Or the Black Panther situation where they saw the scene of, what was it, Killmonger taking off his shirt, and she grinded her teeth so hard that her braces got destroyed or something like that.
God. Yeah.
Something happened with her teeth. And I'm just like, okay, there's being horny, there's jerking off and all of that. How do you break your teeth how do you be so horny that you break your own teeth? Like I genuinely want to know.
I do need to get going, gentlemen. As always, it's been an honor to be on the podcast. Thank you for having me.
What would you rate Magic Mike?
Magic Mike, I'm gonna give this a magical 7.5. I might be being a bit generous, but I do think that some of the cinematography and camera work was legitimately good. I did like Matthew McConaughey's performance, and I liked Olivia Munn's performance. I thought that, the story, it's a little bit by the numbers, but it is entertaining. I mean, it's an interesting story about kind of blue-collar steel workers, and I mean, it was effective. I feel like if it was in the hands of another director, I wouldn't have connected with it.
I do think that there is some clever visual framing, and I think when
definitely
he first walked into this back room, there's this subtle framing where you see a guy using the penis pump just on the top of the frame, and it's right aligned with the corner, and it shows kind of this intimidation and apprehension. It's subtle, clever kind of framing.
Yeah, it's very clever.
And nice prosthetic dick.
But definitely would recommend you guys check out Haywire, Contagion, The Limey. All of those are much better Soderbergh efforts, in my opinion. So, but I still had fun with it. I mean, it's okay.
It happened. Well, thank
Cool.
you, Stephen, for stopping by. Take care, buddy.
Thank you so much. I will take these dollar bills out of my G-string now.
Yep.
And strut off stage.
If only. We'll tell you about what next week's episode is after the fact.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Stay tuned for Conan.
And something I want to mention too is some of the dialogue in this movie is really, it's not Showgirls caliber, but it's really cliche and kind of dreadful. Like there's a scene where Channing Tatum, he just met this guy. He goes into the water with him, jumping off of a bridge, and he says, "I think we should be best friends." I'm like, who talks to people like that? Nobody just says like we should be best friends or we should be friends. Like it just feels like it's kind of talking down to
kindergarten.
Yeah, exactly. It's like talking down to the audience. It's like, hey, audience, these guys are gonna be friends. You didn't get that yet? Okay, we're gonna explain it to you.
Because that's what friends do.
Yeah.
That's what friends do.
And there's so much weird dialogue like that every now and again. It's not consistent. Most of it's just fine. But every now and again, there's like a weird like line of dialogue. I'm trying to think of something else. This film just... I can't stress enough how this film just happened and I forgot about it. Like, it's just so forgettable to me. There's really just nothing about it that stands out to me beyond just the stripper scenes. And it's like, they use like, look what the cat dragged in. Like, really? Do people still use that in 2012? Or, oh no, you like breakfast food.
I mean,
I
think those are the
food?
scenes that most people take away from this film that really get into, is the stripper scenes, because that's kind of that's the hook, line, and sinker of this production.
Exactly, but I just wish there was more than that for me to sink into. But a lot of it's just very cliche, like careful what you dream for. You could live a better life somewhere. You could be more than that. You could be something special. But it's like, okay, I've seen that message a billion times, done better in other movies. Was this movie have to add to that message? And it was just
it does
not
feel
much.
Pretty grounded in what I imagine the reality of the behind the scenes workings of, that is with. Matthew McConaughey's character saying, you're not gonna leave like you should have left at any point, and we don't need you. Just that kind of employee boss dynamic. Yeah. And now this guy has dreams to do other things like make custom furniture, and he's just doing this as like a side gig for the last 6 years. People get stuck in places working towards some other goal for a period of time. But then they get really good at that side quest, and they kind of keep at it for longer than they intended.
Yeah, I know, and that's, something that could be grounded and relatable, but the way the movie handles it, I don't know, it's just so contrived. So, like, it's like, I want to be somebody someday, and I'm going to work towards achieving that goal to be somebody. It's like, if you just have nothing else to add to your character, that's what you give to your character. And the sister of the brother... Oh boy, she cannot act at all. Like, there's so many scenes where like Channing Tatum's like trying to have chemistry with this woman, but she just blankly, woodenly says her lines, and it's so awkward to watch. I hated every scene they were together. Like, it's one actor trying too hard, the other actor not trying at all, and that just constantly clashing and butting heads. It's like, this isn't what I want to see from a romance. I need you to sell me on this couple here. He had way better chemistry with Olivia Munn.
It kind of came a little out of nowhere when they got together at the end.
Yeah, I didn't feel like there was a connection there. I think that's what they were going for, but you don't feel that connection, so it just feels out of nowhere when that happens at the end. And it's just like, she just banes the guy before hanging out for breakfast with this awkward, like, oh, it doesn't open for 7 hours. Yeah, so we gotta do something for another 7 hours. I'm like, where did this come from? Like, not even just, kissing her first or taking her out to dinner first. They're just, oh, okay, great.
I mean, if you're her and you got 7 hours of Channing Tatum, what would you do? This is like the TikTok meme where it says, if we had to do something and I couldn't say no, what would you do? And all the people kind of subverting. I love that TikTok thing where people subvert it, where it's nothing sexual whatsoever. Where it's like the girls. Actually, there's the one where like this guy is at a construction site. He's, yeah, I'm really glad you came in because we're really short-handed. It's no joke. You're gonna have to wear a hard hat. Like, man, that's That's so damn relatable too. Just the shit show work conditions that sometimes happens on construction sites or automotive.
Oh, there's a scene in this when they're working in construction, and he's like, "Oh, you better keep track of your Pepsi, or else I'm gonna mark it down for storage issues." And I'm also like, bullshit. Construction companies don't care about storage until they need something. That's
you
bullshit.
would think, but it's crazy how like stingy they can be. It's insane. I mean, at my work, there's like a freezer, or thing where sometimes they stock it with water and sometimes they stock it with Powerade, but they're never consistent about it, even during the heat wave. And they say anytime that you take out a bottle, put a bottle in, and such. But I don't think people too often do that.
No. Nobody cares until they need something. Like that's something I learned.
It's all about not getting caught taking multiples and having the guy pull out your backpack. But anyway.
Yeah. Oh yeah, nice product placement too. There, by the way, Pepsi paid a lot of money to be in this movie. Like, there's a scene when they're in Florida where they're all drinking Pepsi products. One guy in the background shifts his drink around so the Pepsi logo is facing the front of the camera.
I didn't even notice that, but considering the blue color grade of the film, or at least the blue poster design of like the club and whatnot, it makes sense. Pepsi would want to align their image with this movie.
There's also a lot of yellow in this movie, and I was thinking, why is this movie shot like how a Hollywood movie shoots Mexico? Like, is that part of Florida? Is it just yellow all the time? I've been to Florida.
It was like this off amber kind of sepia yellow for whenever they're outside in the sun.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. It was like a slightly pale piss yellow.
Again, it's one of those creative choices where it's like, what's is there a purpose behind this, or are you just showing off? Because you got shot, you got
it's almost like it's almost like they just changed the color gamut of the camera, and they didn't like color grade it exactly. They just kind of shifted one lever and called it a day.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
When you look at like a neutral logarithmic camera profile on these early digital cinema cameras, and even today, it's a very flat kind of gray look, and a lot of early Vice documentary stuff, they didn't color grade anything. They just kept it in that very flat gray look, and that's an important like thing to shoot because it keeps your colors neutral, and then you can really tone in the colors after. But I mean, they were clearly going for a stark difference where when they're in the club, everything's like a full color and it looks balanced and right, but when they're outside, it's this kind of gray area. I mean, I don't know what the it has a very unique look. Well, not unique, but it has a very certain look that is there's a reason for it, I'm sure.
I'm sure there is. It's just I can't think of anything. I was wondering, it's like, is that symbolic for like stripper culture or like sexual prowess or sexual tension or something like that?
I mean, I think if anything, it's just to keep the looks of outside and inside looking different.
Probably.
Maybe they feel more comfortable indoors doing this thing. I don't know. You should read into it thematically, but it's just a creative choice to keep certain areas and certain scenes looking a certain way.
Yeah.
And keeping them consistent in the movie.
I just like, and that's a style for sure, and because of that, I'll like it more than films that don't try at all. But I just want to know why they're trying in the first place.
I mean, maybe when they're outside like working on the roof, they don't feel so alive, so everything just feels a lot more flat.
Maybe.
Where when they're on stage and expressing themselves, it's more of a proper full spectrum color. So maybe they feel more alive on stage. You should read into it like that, Like having that kind of flat gray, slightly amber look is a little depressive, perhaps, and that's what it looks like when they're outside roofing.
Yeah. Riley Keough was in this movie. She gets no development, but she reminded me that I'm straight, so thank you for that movie. There was some questionable FX on my sexuality throughout the movie, but then she came along. It's like, oh, thank God I'm straight again.
I think that might have been part of the apprehension with some guys watching this film. It's like, what if I like it too much?
Yeah, that's true. Oh, bisexual people, man, this movie would drive them nuts. Like all of the male strippers, but also like Riley Keough and Olivia Munn and the sister characters. It's just, that would be a sexual disaster.
Gay pornography is a medium for all demographics. Everybody likes it, but this guy really likes it.
I don't know how Norm Macdonald constantly comes up in our podcasts. We just always find a way to slip him in there.
Well, he passed away recently, so I think I've just been watching a lot of Norm Macdonald compilations.
That's fair.
So
A lot of it
the
just
references.
happens to tie into what we're talking about too, though.
He had a good voice on just about every issue. With certain degrees of irreverence.
Everything was fair game kind of approach to comedy, which I do appreciate a lot. Rest in peace, Mr. McDonald. I'm not sure what you think about Magic Mike, but I sure hope you enjoyed it. I don't have much else to add. Final thoughts on Magic Mike?
I mean, I'm glad that I finally saw it. I guess it's just as good as any of the other Soderbergh's movies. I don't see myself rewatching it, but it's a well-made film, and the dancing, the stripping in it is really well done. And I mean, there wasn't much that I got out of it beyond that, but I thought, hey, it's a good movie, and I guess I'm glad I finally saw it, so I know what people are so crazy about. Yeah, it was a decent time. I give it like a 6.9. It's just a
yeah. I mean, that fits this time around, to be fair. I would give this... It's just, the movie is so forgettable to me. Like, it has some interesting stylistic choices. Matthew McConaughey and Olivia Munn are genuinely great, and it's got a pretty good sense of humor. I laughed more times than I was expecting, but yeah, I don't know, it just fell flat for me in every other sense, and it just really didn't connect with me in any way. I wanted this to be more than just stripping, and there's a good movie in here somewhere. It just wasn't unleashed onto me while I was watching it.
Maybe Ariel Gardner needs to take a crack at it. She seemed to do wonders with Showgirls.
Yes, please. Hashtag release the Gardner cut for Magic Mike. I'm giving this one a 5.5 out of 10. Feel pretty confident about that. Yeah,
right down the middle.
Yeah, it's just painfully average.
Daryl, Jamar, are you two listening? Do you have any insights to this film? And or anything else you want to talk about? Say hi.
No, I mean, I have not seen Magic Mike either. So sometimes the polls that win are the ones that you didn't even remember pitching. But
oh yeah,
hey,
oh yeah,
that's the Streisand effect for you. Like what's the most ridiculous thing that just it's a good themed episode. It's totally.
Yeah.
It dips your toes in other appendages you weren't hoping to get wet, but they all get dipped in right into the worlds with this, and we really pulled the full Monty on this one. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than I expected, but not in the ways that I was fearing. I don't know why that's a fear. The phobia thing really doesn't make sense when you look at it objectively.
Yeah,
it's just like it's as good as you expect it to be. It's a Soderbergh movie. And it does get a little bit into the psychology of the characters. I mean, I guess the sister's studying psychology. I wish that came up more, though. Like, I wish psychoanalyzed.
Yeah, I wish there was more of the friends with benefits relationship. Like, that could have been really interesting on, like, the emotional impact of being jealous of other partners. But, yeah, they don't go anywhere with that either. It was really disappointing.
If she's studying psychology, she could have been bringing up gripes with them from the psychoanalytical level. I mean, I don't know. It might have made for more interesting bits of dialogue.
No, we gotta get to the stripping faster.
Of course.
Of course.
I mean,
I watched this movie a few hours ago, and I'm struggling to remember anything about it.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I just kind of put it on because I had to see it, and I had other things that I was doing leading up to this, and I left it for last minute. So I don't know. It's probably an element of it that I didn't quite appreciate. That maybe subsequent viewings might lighten me to. I don't know. It'll probably get reviewed somewhere.
Yeah, we had a movie that was terrible, a movie that was straight down the middle, and a movie that was pretty good. Thank you, Daryl, for listening in to this wonderful podcast. All of your insights were great. Insights on the full Monty especially was really interesting, and just appreciate you watching us whenever you can, buddy. You're a great.
Yeah.
Wow, what a terrific audience. And thank you, Devin, for co-hosting once again.
Oh, yeah.
I have a bit of a favor to ask. Since it's my birthday on Friday, could I recommend the next episode?
Oh, I thought it was my turn this time to bring up something.
All right. But, no, you can recommend it. If you want to go, that's all right.
Well, actually, how about this? Since it is your birthday, that's a special day we want to honor. How about we say at the same time what each other's ideas are, and Daryl, who's the third party, objective party here, will pick the one that sounds most appealing to him.
Do we have to do it at the same time? Can we not just do it one at a time?
Well, no. It was going to be like an audio test where it's like which one sticks out more.
Oh, I see.
I was wrestling between two different ideas with mine, but say your idea, say my idea, and we'll flip a coin, I guess.
All right, sounds good. My suggestion was In the Family or Family Martyrs Part 2. I want to talk about the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre along with Stoker and Crimson Peak. More horror films based around the concept of family.
Stoker or Stalker?
Stoker. Sorry, not the original Stalker. Stoker by Park Chan-wook. It was his only American-made movie, I believe.
Wow. That's a pretty compelling
Starring,
one.
Yeah,
the two I was wrestling with was Not the Bees or Punch Not Dead. With the recent upgrade with Punch Not Dead, I was going to have 3 Punch movies, SLC Punch. I was also pitching Hype and something else, but I would also throw in Return of the Living Dead because I hear there's Punch in that movie, and it's actually a pretty underrated zombie movie So I had that one, and then Not the Bees is the remake of The Wicker Man, the original Candyman, and B movie.
Oh my god!
All right, Daryl, what's it gonna be? And be honest, don't just pick because it's my birthday.
Bro, I'm a huge fan of Crimson Peak, and Texas Chainsaws needed to go on for a long time, so that's my personal where I'm swaying. But Not the Bees is a fantastic pitch.
So, how about this, Devin? I'm going to suggest to Steven we do the Crimson Peak episode, and after that we do the Bees episode.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, we could also talk about the Candyman remake, which I have seen. I've seen the original as well.
Right.
So
I want to see the original film because I haven't seen any of them, and I actually managed to pick up the screenplay for the original that has signatures on it. I found it in a box in a flea market, and I picked up it and a couple other screenplays. They look authentic. I don't think they're worth anything, but that's a cool collectible that I have.
Looks fucking crazy. What are the other ones?
Fucking I have a Coen Brothers one. Barton Fink.
Ooh.
What? Also a Single Man.
Wow. Barton Fink is like my favorite Coen Brothers movie.
It's got John Goodman's signature on it.
Oh my god. Come on. First 2001 The Space Odyssey on 70mm, and now you got a signed copy of John fucking Goodman.
I found this in a flea market. I didn't think it was authentic. I just bought it for kicks.
I don't know. Those Candyman signatures looked like they checked out.
Yeah, if I put it in, and I'd buy that for $1, I think, because I more or less did.
Amazing.
There was a bunch of other scripts of like pilots of shows I've never heard of that I didn't bother with that were also signed by people involved. I just picked up the ones that I know that name, even if I haven't seen the movie. Like, okay, that one looks interesting.
Have you seen Barton Fink?
Most of it. I haven't sat through all of it in one sitting. That's the one. That one and Miller's Crossing are a couple of the early Coens that I need to really get into.
And I've done some research on how you can watch these movies. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre you can watch on Shudder. Stoker you can watch on Disney Plus because it's Fox, and Disney owns Fox now. Crimson Peak you can watch on Netflix. So that's an easy
fun
one.
fact. Actually, I did see Texas Chainsaw at the Highland. This was the first time I ever got to go to the Highland.
Bro.
And they had a Halloween double feature.
Yeah, buddy.
Of
I heard
Sounds
about
of the
that.
Lambs.
Yeah. Sounds
of the Lambs on 35mm, and then Texas Chainsaw. I'm pretty sure they just fired up a Blu-ray for it, but it was something else. I actually found it funnier.
16, dude.
Well,
I'm pretty sure it's 16.
The projection was digital, but you could see all the film grain of it. It's a very, low budget shot. On film from the 70s film, but it was a digital projection, but they projected Sounds of the Lambs on actual film.
Oh yeah, 100%. That was the first time Jamar ever saw Silence.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Don't spoil Texas Chainsaw because I haven't seen it yet.
I won't spoil. Oh man.
You're that right.
Yes. It's something. We'll get into that.
Yeah, can't wait. All of that and more next time on Tuesdays with Moire. And is it Tuesday yet? Have a great night, guys. Take care.
Yep.